Hello and welcome to State of the Revolution. We are a show where we kind of dive into about a half hour or so discussion of various revolutionary writings and philosophies. I'm one of your hosts, Heather Warburton, and with me here is Jeremy. How are you going, Jeremy?
I'm doing good. It's a good day to talk about this stuff, especially, given the state of the left.
Yeah. I think that what we're talking about tonight is extremely relevant to everything that's going on in society. What we're talking about tonight is Rosa Luxemburg, and specifically Chapter 7 of her writings. I guess it was a pamphlet, really.
Yeah.
Social reform or revolution. So if there's anybody listening who doesn't know who Rosa Luxemburg was, well, first off, she was a badass. That was badass. She was a Jewish woman who was born in Tsarist Poland when it was illegal to be a socialist in Tsarist Poland. In fact, you could be executed for it. So her family moved to Switzerland, where she was educated, and then eventually to Germany, which was kind of like the socialist hotspot of the day. She was a writer, an influential writer, a philosopher, but eventually she was executed also for her beliefs, as if she'd stayed in Poland, that would have happened. And before we jump into it, I just wanted to say what her last words were as she was being drug off to be executed, just to show how much of a badass she was. Her last words were, "Tomorrow the revolution will rise up again, clashing its weapons, and to your horror, it will proclaim with trumpets blazing, I was, I am, and I shall be." Those are some badass last words.
For someone who was so controversial, she's so appreciated. Like at the same time, she didn't agree with anybody fully, but she didn't disagree with anybody fully either.
Right, like she was a Marxist, but she also sort of disagreed with Marx.
She and Lenin were friends, as far as I know, and they wrote letters to each other, as far as I know. Oh, and they disagree with each other. The Bolshevik Party was too concentrated in terms of its power. But she also thought, and this is the main crux of what we want to talk about tonight, the other sort of reformist approach of having individual workplaces where the workers own a company seem to stop short of genuine revolutionary change. And the person that he was talking about was named Bernstein. And Bernstein was what Rosa called a revisionist. He deviated from what she thought to be socialist principles.
Yeah, she wrote extensively about that. This specific chapter talked a lot about both unions and worker co-ops. And I mean, it's the same discussion we're still having of, can you do social reform or do you need revolution? Can capitalism be reformed? And I think you and I both would fall onto the capitalism cannot be reformed.
It cannot be reformed. It cannot be reformed. Especially with the strategy of just earning as much as you can into unions or co-ops, because then it sort of reverts to like an honor system. Okay, if there, let me give you an example. We'll illustrate it. If there's one co-op in a capitalist mode of production where things are exchanged for profit, and it's a market economy, and it's still under capitalism, it just sort of becomes that the workers become their own capitalist. Now, if hundreds of thousands of cooperatives form and that still happens, they're still sort of at the mercy of the market.
Right. They're in essence competing against other worker co-ops, so they're subject to a lot of those same capitalist pressures of, let's undercut each other so people buy my product. And then when they're undercutting each other, that usually means exploiting labor more to squeeze out those little extra bits of profit.
Yeah. or they would revert to capitalist practices, is because they didn't shed the capitalist culture. So, it's only a matter of time before they either fold or someone takes over management, and just for the sake of efficiency. And you're still undercutting the consumer. You're still charging things beyond the surplus. So the firm can make a profit. And the only thing is, instead of nobody being a capitalist, it sort of becomes like they're all capitalists.
Right.
All tiny little capitalists. That you have these little firms. As Rosa said, it's almost like a return to pre-capitalist conditions, where people are self-employed, and it's like a mercantilist style system instead of a socialist one.
Yeah, she had a great expression of saying that this was merely an attack on the twigs of a capitalist tree, was how she referred to it in this writing.
That is a great line.
It really is. And I also thought she went into talking about with unions. Now, I'm not slamming unions, obviously. In current society, I'm pro-union. But unions, workers don't get to decide what's produced. They just get slightly better treatment than people that aren't represented by a union. So there's still that alienation from their labor. They don't get to decide what the society needs. There's still someone that owns the company saying, this is what you're going to produce. You're just going to be treated slightly better than someone who isn't represented by a union. So you're still very disconnected.
And let's say that every company in the national economy was unionized. That just zeros it out. And the capitalists can offer some concessions to the group of workers, but they still need a job, and they're still agreeing to the fundamental relationship of employer and employer. So, unions only matter to the extent that some companies are not unions. Otherwise, they wouldn't have anything to negotiate against.
Right.
Actually, if the bosses go together and say, these are our terms, the capitalist is only have much more negotiating power even under that relationship.
Right. Because, well, that kind of has happened historically, right? Like when the owners of production or business owners come together, isn't that kind of where like the Chamber of Commerce's came out of? Was that sort of organizing against the organized labor?
There's also no guarantee that union leadership is going to be in the best interest of the working masses, because what they're trying to do is generally to avoid struggle, to get things done, to come to agreements. Whereas more revolutionary-minded workers are trying to take power from their employer. Some union leadership is trying to collaborate with the owning class, which isn't good.
Right. They're almost like compromising the revolutionary values just to keep their union power at times.
Yeah. And, you're not going to have, people represented by major union leadership. It'd be the ones to try and occupy a major corporation, because they're already pretty comfortable and they have a lot to lose. What you're going to do is have a bunch of people who are currently, making close to minimum wage. They're going to be the ones to try and occupy the buildings. They're going to be the ones to try and take control. And it's not going to be like, you sit in a boardroom, or in this case, a Zoom meeting, and talk to your boss and come to one understanding. It's going to be more hostile than that.
Right. Rosa actually talks about that in this, that if we got slightly better conditions, that kind of kills that income disparity that's always the driving force of revolution. That then you're just left with, well, socialism is just morally right. There's not that underlying driving force that's pushing forth a revolution. And, oh, well, it'll lead to a more equal, and that's better, and that's morally better, and it'll lead to more capitalist or more democracy, when really it kind of is the exact opposite, is what Rosa argues.
Yeah.
That no, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
So that, not to say that Rosa was necessarily like an accelerationist or something, but that she said that you really can't ever have democracy under capitalism, that that's not necessarily the course that history has taken, and that if you're just purely motivated by that desire and drive for justice, that you never really get there, and that income disparity is the real engine that drives change, the struggle.
Edward Bernstein is kind of reminds me of a modern counterpart, a Marxian professor named Richard Wolff, who's made it big on YouTube with his organization Democracy at Work, which hosts lectures every now and then. He's a professor, and he talks about the importance of worker co-ops. But in talking about he talks about the importance of the workers keeping the profits and deciding what's produced and how it's produced, and he has no interest, it seems, in communism, in the transcending of the market economy, in a stateless society, in a society without exchange, where things are freely taken according to need. What he seems to want, and what Bernstein seems to want by Rosa's characterization of him, is what she refers to as a juster, and still more just method of distribution. And that really isn't what we seem to want. Most of us who are not reformists, but it seems like people who are obsessed with the idea of the worker co-op seem to think that if they can get at their specific workplace to commit to transitioning into a worker co-op, they can get at a little taste of freedom. It'll break for the rest of the alienation of the capitalist system without completely escaping it. And for people who are relatively content with their income level, that seems to be fine with them. And if they're interested in socialism on a surface level, but are generally content with their lives, they're like, yeah, sure, I'll vote on how stuff happens. I'll keep more profits. We'll decide on how things are distributed. I don't know why so many people are concerned with enumerating the amount of labor someone does. There's nothing is atomized or independent of anything, and it's all connected. It's hard to really know what the most just distribution is, especially if you don't try and abolish the market mode of exchange.
Right. And without a guaranteed consumer base, it's the capitalist market economy. You almost need to have consumer co-ops as well as worker co-ops. And at that point in time, why don't we just go communist?
Yeah, Wolff did mention when someone asked, what's better, a worker co-op or a consumer co-op? He said at both, but he, never mentioned anything about getting rid of money. And at that point, it's hard to imagine what he had in mind. Would people declare themselves consumers of this energy company or this cable company. Would we all kind of meshed together in a big giant industry networks where we're all contributing to the extent that we can, and maybe we have multiple jobs, and maybe we're representing multiple councils. It's hard to know what people have in mind if they're so concerned with democracy in the individual workplace. Because if one company has democracy in the workplace and another one doesn't, chances are the one that doesn't is richer and us has more power over the worker co-op.
Right, and it sounds horribly complicated, having this series of lots and lots of worker co-ops and lots of consumer co-ops, and we've got to track everything. And they say we're complicated with just wanting to get rid of money. No, this sounds really hard to keep track of.
Wolff, I think, mentioned in one of the videos that I need to, how would funding of worker co-ops happen? And then he actually, mentioned venture capital, and that really confused me. You can go to a venture capitalist, and they can agree to give you money for a certain percentage of the profits, but they have to understand that they're not the ones making decisions. I'm like, what's the point of that? That's even better for some capitalists who are not interested in management, and they just want. So, what kind of revolution are we having here? And you have to ask a rich guy for money, and hope that he doesn't try to interfere.
Right. Financialization of the economy is the number one strip miner of wealth out of the economy and out of especially the global south and places that are really actively being exploited. That financial system is one of the driving forces of evil that we should all be fighting against here.
The person who is so concerned with the worker co-op seems to have no interest in abolishing imperialism, in deconstructing what is now the United States of America. What they want is, if they have a job, it's similar to what they do, except one day a week, they vote on decisions. And that's not really a change in the larger culture, is it?
Right. So, I guess we would say we both agree with Rosa that this is not going to lead to any sort of real democracy or any sort of real freedom. That Rosa was right on this.
Historically, socialism has manifested itself in a movement where workers take state power and make the decisions on behalf of the working masses who are not as intellectually advanced politically as the workers. It's some members of the working class representing most members of the working class. And Rosa also had an issue with that too, because she said in another work that socialism is not a Christmas gift if brought to you after behaving. Paraphrasing here. It involves the whole mass of people. And one of the things that I've tried to formulate in on my political journey is the practice of keeping the format of the corporation alive, but making it so that the workers of the biggest corporations that exist now, first of all, the masses of those tend to be the most exploited because they're the richest, and those corporate workers, usually in retail or in manufacturing, coming together and planning an economy around their immediate needs, and as it turns out, most people, because of the concentration of wealth, tend to focus their discretionary income on a few companies. So if those companies were to say, okay, and now we're going to plan the economy, but we want your help. Should we keep this product? Should we introduce this product? We're going to give it away. It's, because, we dominate the economy now, so there's no reason to go with money because there's enough to go around. And if the small businesses feel pressure, they can either try to continue with their, essential sharecropping business, where you have to, but in order to buy the product at the small business that you're so fond of, you essentially would have to work there because there's only so many small businesses to go around. If people will gravitate towards the decision-making power and the literal freedom, because it's free, if it doesn't cost any money, to, gravitate towards the proletarianization of major corporations. If, there was a meeting every now and then of, the flagship store of Amazon, and, there was a live stream or a TV show of Amazon workers fighting with each other and also fighting with the customers. And, first of all, it'd be entertaining to watch. And second of all, there'd probably be some sort of consensus that they would come to. And that would mean that, and instead of being, not as alienated from your particular workplace, but alienated from the larger context, if we take the larger context from the biggest companies that exist now, and we make the decisions for all the industry and the networks of industry, because industries often, cooperate with each other, trying to profit off each other, I think that would be a much smoother road towards a classless society than just a market economy where everyone is a petty capitalist.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, I know we've talked about the nationalizing of Amazon before, but like the TV channels of like the workers of like Amazon and Walmart and all of these mega corporations making their decisions and broadcasting that to everyone. I'm kind of thrown and intrigued and kind of love this idea. So I'm just kind of envisioning this whole thing in my head now. And, I can see it.
I do explain in, my theory is sort of a synthesis of syndicalism and mass line practice of Maoism. Where, instead of the government talking into the masses about what they need to be, the people who are in charge of the most production, in this case it'd be Walmart and Amazon and in terms of media it'd be Comcast and DirecTV or whatever. I think it'd be safe to assume that without the incentive of market economy, many of the major corporations would merge into, or at least merge, and if they want to keep their brand names, they can keep their brand names for the sake of, in the same way there are different departments to every corporation. And I think that brand names would sort of survive, at least in the initial transition, and from capitalism to, being in the middle of a socialist transformation. And I think that the companies would generally work together since there's no reason to try and be better than one another.
Right, it would be a hard sell to be like, okay, everybody over there is collectivized, they're getting their needs met for free, but you should come work for us and be a part of our market economy over here where we continue exploiting you. Like, that would be a hard sell for any of those other corporations.
So, I think that, we'd have, live streams or TV shows maybe once a week, maybe once every couple of weeks, where corporate and for corporations from around the world would talk to one another and argue about the direction where the industry as a whole is going. And that's the emphasis I want to make. The point I think is important is the industry as a whole and the way the respective industries interact with each other, not the co-op, because the co-op is an atomized individual workplace. And I think, and this is a very important point, that it's important for people who work at major corporations like Amazon, like McDonald's, like Walmart, like Comcast, like Microsoft, like whatever else it is, that we think of, the people abroad who happen to be employees of the same corporation, to think of each other as our coworkers, even if we don't speak the same language, even if we don't live in the same place. We too often think of coworkers as the people who work in the same space or the same manager or that we do. And that's a limited way.
It's a very small imagination of what your coworker is. It's probably just the people in like your immediate office and cubicle network. It's not, somebody who works for the same company across the country or around the world. That's not usually what most people think of.
And I think that's one of the major problems with co-ops, is that people are going to think of their coworkers as, the people who are, well, maybe COVID has changed this, but it's been the people who work in the same physical space, the people who go to the same place, the people who are, in the case of COVID, on the same email list. It's not, going to be a person in the global south who happens to also work at Twitter or Amazon or Facebook or Comcast. It's not going to be that.
It's still very fractured, and that kind of, it's set up to almost dissuade us from organizing together and viewing each other as our brothers and in the struggle. It's almost like it maybe was deliberate that way of how it's set up. I don't know.
The last-ditch effort to save capitalism, I think, will be to market the worker co-op as a new capitalist innovation. And it kind of is, but it's also the idea of a socialist. And if people if worker co-ops start proliferating more in America, for example, because it's one of the most individual cultures there is in the United States. If it starts proliferating here, that means that companies are going to start making commercials like, come join this new innovation in the market economy, the worker co-op, where all the workers make decisions together. It's the ultimate worker and consumer democracy. You know how the capitalists love the word democracy.
Almost like it would be this worker co-op brought to you by Amazon.
Yeah.
Like there's still just a subset of this same evil engine, but now like, hey, look what we've done for you. Yeah, I can see that for sure. Well, we are down to about a minute or so left, so we should probably wrap up with our thoughts on what we thought of Social Reform or Revolution, Chapter 7. Like almost everything I read by Rosa, I thought it was very dense. Now, this is not like you sit down and breeze through it. It's short, but it's dense material, like a lot of the German philosophers of the time. But, Rosa was ahead of her time, and the woman knew what she was talking about. What do you think, Jeremy?
I think it's very telling and also pretty surprising that we're having these exact same arguments. On the one side, people are like, let's see state power and distribute according to what the needs of the people are. And one's like, yeah, but that doesn't really address democracy. Let's have a market economy. You have more unions and have more co-ops. And Rosa just looks at that and he's like, no, you're both kind of wrong.
Right. And I think that's great that she can just say, you're both kind of wrong. Let's do better, everyone. Like, don't get so stuck in your sect of, this is the kind of communist or socialist I am. Maybe that you're all wrong. And that's, I think, why people kind of like Rosa.
Yeah.
All right. It's been a good discussion tonight.
The modern internet parlance, both an ultra and a tanky.
Yeah. Oh, it's been a good conversation tonight. It's been deep.
Really
I've enjoyed it. So, any last closing words?
Transform, innovate, seize corporate power and go beyond the markets. Go beyond the co-op, go beyond the union. We can do better.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us here tonight. And this was the State of the Revolution with Heather and Jeremy. See you guys again next month.